Welcome back to the Nerdrotic Podcast. My name is Gary Buechler. I am live in San Francisco, California, and I come to you from nerdrotic.com. And down south, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Dennis Bithoulkas. Dennis, what is up?
Not much. We're here on a lovely Super Bowl Sunday that no one's watching because, let's frankly, it's the Patriots and the Eagles. No one really cares. Unless you're from, no one on the West Coast cares.
Yeah, that's for dang sure. Sorry, I'm getting our chat up here. So yeah, this is counter programming. We just had the time and we wanted to talk about Altered Carbon from Netflix. Netflix recaps have always been a tough nut for us to crack because they drop everything at once and everybody watches them at different times. So we don't have that set audience right after a show airs. So it's not, we're just going to talk about the first half of the series. We're going to go up to episode 6. If somebody in the chat wants to trickle into further episodes, that's fine. Just be careful of spoilers. We are going to spoil this one. We're going to talk about the plot. We're going to recap it as best we can.
Ghost World. I know Ghost World's only up to episode 4 right now. So once after that, you might want to leave after that. I don't know. It's up to you.
Yeah. Well, we decided on episode 6 because it's got a good hard ending that doesn't really spoil the second half of the series. Dennis has finished it. I've gotten halfway through the final episode. We will be doing the final half tomorrow night, which will be pretty much the whole series. So if you want to wait till tomorrow night, that's cool. And Star Trek Discovery will be on time. We're going to do this for about 45 minutes to an hour.
We're going to be quick.
Chit-chatting about
a lot of information to cover.
Very good show that deserves podcasts for each individual show, but unfortunately we don't have time for that. So here we go.
Yeah.
So we talked about episode 1 a little bit, but we can go into, we kind of did it spoiler free. So we've got a series that it's based on a book. And I downloaded the audiobook and I was listening to a bit of it last night. The reader is terrible. It's that they need to redo that. Oof, man, put me to sleep in like 5 minutes. It's just monotone the whole time. And it's really, really not good. Exactly. I was out, man. I was out like a trout. So we've got Takashi Kovacs.
Yeah, I call him Kovacs. Everyone pronounced it differently. Someone says Kovac, someone says Kovac, someone says Kovic. I mean, I was listening to it and it just drives me up the wall. Everyone says it differently, but the way it's spelled is Kovacs.
Yeah, but I think you pronounce it Kovic. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure.
Everyone says it differently.
I like tack.
Yeah, we'll just say tack. Tack is good. Yeah, that works.
It works. So we're in the future. I'm not really sure how far in the future. It's few hundred years, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And you are able to back yourself up on a stack, which is basically a USB drive that you stick in the back of your neck, and you can live forever as long as you have the money. That's what's really interesting about this, because I think that's the most accurate. This is definitely not a Star Trek futuristic tale. It's very much set in the world of Blade Runner / anime. A little bit of Total Recall, a lot of things mixed up here, a lot of genres that I love, but it's future noir basically, and it starts out as a murder mystery.
I'm going to interrupt you here. There is one thing: everyone gets to live forever. You just get, if you have the money, you get to choose your sleeve, as they call it, the body that you go into. But if you don't have any money, then you get whatever's available, which is
if you can get it. Yeah. Otherwise, you stay, I guess, alive in your stack, and maybe that gets stored somewhere. They don't really go into, like, if you really can't even afford, I guess there's government sleeves.
Yes.
That you must pay taxes for. This takes place in San Francisco, my hometown.
Bay City.
They call it Bay City, which, I mean, that's kind of what it is. And it's a big megalopolis, although Oakland retains its identity in this.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that.
Nobody wants to absorb Oakland. Poor Oakland. It never gets a fair shake. Oakland's blowing up, though. Come on, Oakland's blowing up. It is. So we follow Tack, who this is what's really cool about this show is you see 3 different Tacks. in this show. We get the original one. We get one that he gets a little later. We start out with what IMDb calls OG tack, but actually that's probably second tack that we're assuming.
Because there's Earth Sleeve. Basically, we actually get 4. We also get him as a child as well. So we get Earth Sleeve tack, his body that we see the Protectorate take him from in the first episode, tack, and then we get to see the sleeve that he's put into now 250 years after he's been put on ice.
Yeah, and that's just what we've seen. He's been in a lot more bodies. There was a file that somebody, I can't remember what episode it was, where they went through, and he's been in some women before. He's been,
the first one,
yeah, and they play with that a lot with putting women in men's bodies. That goes with the we see right away that like a little girl gets put into an older lady's body. It's messed up, but and we're dealing with the meths, which are named after Methuselah, the time of Methuselah. Oh wow, what's that?
I'm not. She just gave us $5.
Oh my God! Thank you. Does she have a question?
She doesn't have a question. She just gave us $5. Unless she has one. If you have one, please go ahead and ask away.
Okay, so yeah, we're in the time of Methuselah, and that's from the Bible, where you live up to 960 years old, but they can live longer than that. You can't just jump in. If you live for a long time and you jump into a bunch of different bodies, it does mess with your psyche a little bit. But if you jump into your clone, it's fine. It fits like a glove.
It's less fracturing,
but clones cost a lot of money. So the meths live above the clouds. It's constantly foggy in San Francisco, and there's these giant towering buildings, which they actually just built one that does go over the clouds. It's the Salesforce Tower that you can see from my house now. That thing is giant. It's the tallest building on the West Coast now, and that thing is regularly above the fog layer, which is pretty trippy. So yeah, it takes place in this really messed up San Francisco, where a lot of people live in storage containers, even on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yep.
The Golden Gate Bridge is covered with storage containers. So it's a really cool world. They really did a great job of world building on this.
I made it look really nice. Yeah, they did a nice job making it look very gritty. And oh, by the way, thank you, Viking Bitch. She said you just wanted to show us some love. That's why she gave us the $5. So thank you.
We love love.
Yes, we do. So yeah, they did a really good job. Yes, it looks a little Blade Runner-ish, but you know what? Anytime you're going to be doing like more of a dystopian, futuristic society where you have a lot of people that are living on the ground who are called grounders, and then the people that are living up in the sky, up in the atrium is what they're called. So they have their heads in the clouds, if you will. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of that kind of Blade Runner look, if you will. And I don't mind it.
No, I think it's done really well. And let's face it, so much anime has borrowed from Blade Runner anyway, or maybe Blade Runner borrowed from it. I don't know how far
50/50.
Back it goes. Yeah, 50/50. And if you do it right, it's cool to emulate. And I think it just opened up the world. And instead of just doing, the synth or the replicant, it's kind of changing that story into just the real human body. And the question of the soul. There is a religious sect that I guess you can sign a waiver, so your stack doesn't get you can't get spin up, I guess, which is like if you're murdered or killed, you get spun up, and they can ask you like how you died.
That's what the 638 is all about. The 638 is
653.
Or 653, excuse me, 653. 638, I don't know where that came from. So the 653 is actually a referendum going to the UN that was killed, that would have people that were religiously coded that were killed could be brought back to identify their killer. Otherwise, if you're religiously coded, if your stack is religiously coded, you can't be brought back, and because it's against your wishes. And so yeah, that's how it's kind of left. So anyone who's killed that has this religious coding can't come back to identify their killer. And that's what that 653 was all about.
Yep. So it starts out with a murder mystery, and we have Lawrence Bancroft, who is one of the meths, and he was killed, and they take Tack, who has been on ice for 250 years, and they wake him up, and he's in a new body, which does play into it in a little bit. And they start out at Alcatraz, and he's asked to solve this guy's murder. So, you know, he invites him to the house, and on his way to that house, he gets taken there by a cop, Ortega. He doesn't know this at first. She kind of commandeers. It was supposed to be Bancroft's son to pick him up. She or her partner picked him up on some kind of drunk driving. She took over the limo and basically interrogated him all the way up to the house. And that's where we meet Ortega, Lieutenant Ortega, who is our other main character in this, and a character that definitely grew on me. I didn't like, there's one scene where she completely overacted to a Patrick Stewart level. It was pretty bad, but as it goes on, I definitely see why they picked her for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I see two reasons, honestly, but that's just me.
I don't want to bury the lead here, but for one, we can thank Westworld for this. And if you're not for this, I'm sorry, but this show single-handedly brought nudity back more than Game of Thrones or even Westworld could. They dialed it up to 11.
There was a ton of nudity in this one.
There's lots of things flopping around and a lot of shrubbery. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I was actually kind of, especially in the last two episodes, just like, damn, that's a lot of nudity.
There are moments where this reads like a 15-year-old fan fiction, but in a good way. Trust me on this. And the book was written in 2003, so I can't say, I'm like, God, that's a lot like Expanse, but now we got to say Expanse is a lot like Altered Carbon, especially with it's a UN government, and it's called the Protectorate, and there's no more United States, and I guess they've colonized many planets. They've gone as far as 80 light years away from Earth. And we find out much later how they're able to travel so far. They don't really go into, other planets or anything. We go to one other planet, but they keep this down on Earth, and it starts out as a real grounded story. That's why this is brilliant how they started out. They started out basically as just a murder mystery. So Tack meets Lawrence Bancroft, and just right away he's your typical just ridiculously rich person. He's 300 years old, 320 years old, something like that.
You're talking about Bancroft? You said Tack. That's
why I was Bancroft.
Bancroft. Okay.
No, Tack is talking to Bancroft. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, he is 360 years old, if I remember, is what they said. And basically we find out that Bancroft owns Tack. He owns his body, and the whole point of him bringing Tack back is to solve his murder. And he basically says, you know what, if you solve my murder, I will give you a full pardon. He goes, I've got a pardon right here, and signed by the Protectorate. I'll give you $50 million, which is a fortune, in UN credit. I'll give you, even resleeve you. That's what they call the bodies, or sleeves, because you get resleeved, and to whatever you want. He goes, I'll make it to your specifications, and you can go off and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he's giving him the full Megillah here.
He did. And he wanted to pick Tack in particular because he was an envoy, and he's the last surviving envoy. And this was basically I don't want to say a rebel group to the Protectorate, but they're kind of like rebel ninjas. And they were trained by one particular person. We just know her as Falconer.
Yeah.
And like her teachings are known to that day. And the weird thing is, he fought this war, and he was part of that group to stop people like the meths. And he wakes up 250 years later, basically living in the world he fought to keep from happening. So it's just exactly what absolute defeat.
What they were predicting was going to happen if this went through, and exactly what they said was going to happen happened.
Yep. And it's bad. So this guy, he wakes up, he finds out he's the property of the thing he hates, that he fought against. And it's even bad. They have a conversation where Bancroft is talking to him, because it's 250 years ago. So just put it in like today. It's like somebody from the War of 1812 waking up now, and fought for the British, and he's in America, and it's total defeat. So Bancroft is, I have a lot of reverence for you guys. You guys are great. And he's I'm so insensitive. This is just yesterday for you, so he's still got all these emotions going on, and hormones, by the way. He mentions up that your hormones keep going, and he's got 250 years worth of hormones built up, by the way, which comes into play in a little bit.
Yeah.
We, very little information giving other than the basic murder in the first episode. And we get a little background on TAC on not much. The second episode is where we start to get TAC's origin. And what they do is they tell you, they're telling, there's a lot going on in this series. So the two main stories are, there's, the murder mystery, and then there's basically TAC's origin. What led to him he got essentially caught at one point and locked up it was supposed to be for life. He was life forever. He was not supposed to be taken off ice. So I'm wondering why they kept him on ice. There had to be a reason, right?
I think it's probably torture more than anything else, because I think time passes for you in the stack, even though you're not connected to anything. They didn't really go into that, but that's kind of what I got, as a result of some of the things. Because he even asks when he comes out of it, it's like, how long have I been out? And he knows a lot of time has passed, but he just doesn't know how much. And
I love that scene where they bring him out, and you could tell it's some girl on her first day on the job, and the guy's training her, and he's usually they're, they just flop around a little bit, and it takes him a long time to get going. And he was aware the second he woke up. So, that's why Bancroft picked him. The thing about the envoys is they're so highly trained, they're Batman. Think of League of Shadows. It's just like that.
When you get re-sleeved, you actually have re-sleeving sickness, and they actually give you a cocktail. The envoys were actually trained so they could re-sleeve and be, aware at a moment's notice. So they could go into multiple sleeves, however many times they wanted to, without getting that sickness. And that's what they were trained to do, which is really kind of sick when you think about it.
It is. It totally is. For one, it's all based on sobriety. One thing they mentioned, there's a lot of drugs in this society, and they're just used. There are black market drugs, but then most people are on something of some kind. They don't go too much into it into the show, but it's there. It's there. So we get at the end, he kind of meanders through. TAC actually turns down Bancroft at first, and wants to go back on ice. He's all, screw it, this world sucks, I don't like this. So he's basically gonna go get some hookers and get some drugs, have a good day, and then go back on ice. But in the meantime, we have Ortega following him around.
Yeah, and then TAC goes to a hotel. It's an AI hotel that no one goes to anymore. No one has gone to these hotels for 50 years because the AIs are a little bit clingy and they're a little psychotic. And he decides to stay there. And he's got a whole backpack full of drugs. He's just going to have a good meal, have a hooker, do some drugs, and then go back on ice is what he wants to do. But a group of hitmen have a different idea. They come in and they want to take him. And it isn't until TAC actually registers with the hotel opens up a barrage and just takes out these hitmen. I mean, just, going to town on them. And the final hitman, he just wants to know who hired them, because they know him by his name. They know who he is.
Yep.
Which no one knows about. No one's supposed to know about this. Ortega knew who he was. So he's just starting to put these things together like, what the hell? This is a bigger thing. And of course, the hotel kills him before he gets a chance to say anything. And that's when he says, okay, I'm going to take the job then.
Yep. And if you didn't recognize that one Russian who did survive till the end, that was Hilo from Battlestar Galactica. Good old Hilo. Yeah. So, we get in the second episode, and this is where we get a lot more background on TAC. We get to see, him and when he was a kid, right?
A little bit, yeah. We mainly have him tracking down who sent Bancroft the death threats, and so he's going through all the death threats that Bancroft has received, and he finally comes down to one that he goes to track down, and this is Vernon Elliot. Vernon Elliot has a problem with Bancroft because he believes that Bancroft killed his daughter, Lizzie.
Yeah, Bancroft does some really nasty, nasty stuff. And Lizzie, we don't know at this point what happened to his daughter, Lizzie, but her mind is just destroyed. So she's saved in a VR, basically, just her mind. And she's basically in the fetal position, holding a teddy bear with rats running all over. And that's the, that's the only way, her dad was or Elliot, the guy, he tracked him down through a gun. He was going through all those videos of all the death threats, and he got a serial number. So he tracked him down, and he was a Marine and a medic, but he's not, great with tech. So he was just able to save her this much. And, he was just what TAC was doing was just trying to figure out, just going through some leads. And I guess he felt sorry for the guy. And this is part of the Envoy training. Part of the Envoy training is, immerse yourself into a society and, find some allies, some locals who are very disposable. So what you do is you pretend to be their bud. This is really kind of cold-blooded. It
really is.
It really, the Falconer teachings are not nice at all. And it's almost a terrorist group. And you're supposed to make friends and, dump them. Don't get attached to them or anything, but pretend to be their buds. So this is his first ally. Right.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you here. Ghost World. Lizzie isn't missing. She, her father has her stack, and she was dead. Basically, her sleeve was killed, was dumped in an alley, and her father got her stack, and so he's putting it in VR, and he goes and visits her in this low res VR, if you will, and he can't communicate with her to find out who killed her or anything like that. She's just laying in an alley with these rats crawling over her, basically in the fetal position. She's extremely traumatized. And that's where we leave her off at, is like that.
Yeah, and we find out a little later, and we won't describe it too much, kind of what happened to her.
Yeah.
She gets torn to shreds, basically, but just in a very horrible way. That's next episode, though, we find out. You already have sympathy for Elliot, and I forgot the actor's name, but I love this guy. He's great in this. Pretty much everybody's great in this show, by the way.
Yeah, everyone is really good in this show. Vernon Elliot is played by Atto Ezendoa.
Yes, and I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He's one of those guys I was like, I've seen him in a bunch of stuff, but I cannot remember right now, and I don't have IMDb popped up. I do, but I can't get that. There you go. So so he gets his new ally. It's it takes a couple visits. He busts down his door, and he's all, "Why'd you do that?" He's all, "Well, you weren't coming to the door." He's all, "I was busy." Well, you didn't need to knock down my door. This thing isn't totally dark, by the way. That's what made it. It's super violent, but it's a lot of fun.
It's very it doesn't delve too deeply either. That's the other thing. I could have gone into a little more depth with it, but I liked it for what it was. How they it didn't go deep, but it didn't go shallow either. It could have gone really shallow on this story, and it didn't.
No, it kind of hit the sweet spot with it. I mean, it's not like Mr. Robot or Counterpart or anything like that, but there's a good enough mystery to keep it going. But it's also I'm not that I would want to live there, but it's great sci-fi. So much sci-fi, especially when it's dystopian, or it's usually post-apocalyptic, where everything's destroyed and everybody's living in rags. It's basically pretty much Mad Max remade over and over and over and over again. Yeah. So I love this kind of sci-fi where there's just a big full world, and it looks like you're just fully immersed in it. So yeah, it was good.
So we end up having Vernon keeps trying to kill Kovacs, and Kovacs keeps knocking him out and tying him down to question him. And when he finds out that Vernon basically didn't do anything to Bancroft, that he wasn't he isn't a suspect, he decides to use Vernon a little bit for his own needs. Basically use him as a backup, if you will. And in the meantime, we find out that Ortega has actually well, she's tracking Kovacs illegally. She has a Hawkeye program that she's stolen from the police department, and she's tracking his every move because, as she calls him, is a terrorist. Of everything that he's done, she knows his laundry list of offenses there, and she's been following him illegally as well.
And she's really obsessed with him. Okay, which explains her little tirade that seemed kind of weird in the first episode, but it totally makes sense what you find out when you find out. But yeah, she's absolutely obsessed with Tak and wants to keep an eye on his every move. So she's like a good cop. You know, she doesn't break rules usually, so it's kind of out of her character. I mean, she is kind of a badass, but you know, her partner is even Aboud, who is like a little thrown off by it, and he's like, "What is your problem with this?" You know, and yeah, we find out later. But yeah, she won't let him out of her sight for any reason.
Yeah, and we find so Kovacs ends up going back to or Tak ends up going to where Lizzie was working at, which is the Jack Me Off Lounge, and she finds he finds a hooker that's there, one of the hookers that's working behind the glass, and pretends to be Lizzie's mother. That's cross-sleeved, and cross-sleeved means you change genders when you're in a if you're a female, born female, and you go into a male's body, or vice versa. And she says, "Yeah, I'm just looking to see what happened to my daughter, who killed her," and basically he's trying to gain the confidence of this prostitute so that he can get information from her. And she says, "Come back tomorrow night. I'll have some more information for you." And of course he gets attacked by some enhanced guy, some guy
by Bane.
Yeah, Bane, exactly. And of course he beats the crap out of him.
Yep. Due to the Envoy training.
Yeah. And that's kind of where we leave off with episode 2. And we end up going into episode 3 with Kovacs. He's going to recruit Elliot to watch his back at a banquet, because he's been invited to Bancroft's banquet or party, if you will. And actually, Bancroft's kind of upset at him because he hasn't responded back to the formal invitation that Poe has finally, that he sent to the hotel, and that Poe has been trying to give Kovacs all this time. Of course,
and did we mention the AI program? Where he's staying in that AI hotel that's filled with stalkers is Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, we mentioned that in the first. Yeah, we didn't mention it in this one.
That's I just wanted to bring that up again. Yeah, and it's kind of my favorite character. I think it's a lot of people's favorite character.
Yeah, and he's really good. I mean, he does
really, really good.
Yeah. And then we end up having so this dinner party. Ortega is also going to attend it as well because they've been licensed for a death match. Yeah, and the death match is between a married couple. And basically whoever wins gets an upgraded sleeve, while the other one gets a downgraded sleeve.
I love the part when they go, it was Tak and Ortega talking to him, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you're married?" And they're all, "Yeah." "You got kids?" "Yeah, 5 and 7 or something like that." But they don't know the difference, and they both at the same time go, "They know the difference," or they don't know the difference, or yeah, they're like, yeah, they know. It messes them up.
They just say they know. Yeah. They both say at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah,
and which they would. That is messed up and funny, but it's just the beginning of how messed up and jaded the meths are. This isn't like your typical rich bad story. Okay, yeah, they pretty much say the rich people are bad, but it's way more than that. It's not just money. It's and it's a very important part to the story.
And you find out that this party is everyone's supposed to bring something unique to the party and present it to everyone. And Bancroft presents Tak as his unique item as the last of the envoys, to Tak's complete and total, he's pissed. You could tell he's pissed that if you could kill him right then and there, he would.
Yeah. And he put it under, when Bancroft invited him, he's like, "I want you to come here to find out who killed me. I'm going to invite all the people who, this will be a banquet, and these are all the people who I would think would want to kill me." And Tak's like, "That's a really bad idea," and it was just BS. It was just so he can get Tak there and completely humiliate him. further than he is already, you know. Yeah, he was pissed. And, you know, Joel Kinnaman can like do like pissed off face really good. I don't know. I like him as an actor a lot. He was one of my favorite things in Suicide Squad. There was not many favorite things in that movie. Although I didn't hate it as much as well, the third act sucked, but
yeah,
he's good. He's good. He's good in this. And yeah, he does good pissed off face.
Candace Williams actually just said here that whole line between the two married couples, they're used to it. They don't get used to it.
They don't. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. That was it. I missed that one. No, they don't.
And yeah, I agree, Candace. Yes, the mechs have lost, or the meths have lost all morality. They are like the Greek gods. They do horrible things because they're bored.
Yep. And that's essentially it. Is we're actually seeing like the origin of gods, essentially, and that theme plays out a lot more. And you know, they just talk about it early on, but you see it as they do a really good job of showing it to you as the series goes on, like how sick these people get. I mean, just think about now, you know, where people have limited lifespans and how jaded some people get. So yeah, imagine if you could live for 500 years, and they take it there. They definitely do. This is a really cold-blooded show. It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, there's dead kids. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. You were warned.
So Ortega actually, when she's going through the party, she's actually scanning all the Methuselahs that are around there, and she sees some guy that is out of place. And she has Mikey, the tech down at Bay City PD, in on this, and she goes, "Do you see that guy?" And he goes, "What guy?" And he doesn't see them. Actually, I take that back. Abood is actually looking at this, and he goes, "I don't see anybody." So they have Mikey the tech later on looking at this over, and he's like, "This is amazing. This guy has found some way of actually erasing himself from all the Onis." Onis are actually these contact lenses that they wear that basically it's a cell phone information, all that stuff, all in your eye. And he's found a way of erasing himself from this. And he just comes out like this little blur, like a digital blur, if you will. And so she sets Mikey on that task of trying to crack that code so that we can see who this guy is.
It's really cool when you get a phone call too. The left or right eye will like light up a little bit. Yeah, it's cool how they do that.
Whatever eye you put your contact lens in. Yeah.
Yes. Also, there was one girl at this party that we got to point out. That's basically the art curator for Bancroft, and she comes out with a snake. And this was before Bancroft humiliated Tack, and she's all, "This is my most valuable item." And she had taken the stack of a murderer and rapist and put it in a snake. And I guess it's against the law to do that, right?
Put a human in an animal.
It causes a mental break. But she makes a great speech about we're above the law. There's no laws for us, and F this MFer anyway. So she's important later, but I think we should point her out. Yeah.
She actually said she took the stack out of the snake, put it, back into his sleeve, and all he did was lay on the ground and writh.
It broke him.
Broke him completely. And it's just like, wow, that's just really disturbing. Yeah. So at the very end there, we end up having Kovac going back to the Jack Me Off at the end of this party. Well, I take that back. So during the party, during the death match, and we forgot to mention in episode 2 that Kovac and Miriam,
that's kind of important.
Bancroft's wife, have slept together because she has pheromones that exude from her body the way that's been genetically engineered. So she kind of, in a way, kind of rapes him in a way, if you will. He's not like totally unwilling, but she does kind of force him.
It's still kind of messed up. And she's your typical not typical in life, but typical Hollywood rich bored housewife that's in so many things. But she's played really well. And Tack doesn't say no, but he does mention earlier, he's like, "Listen, I've had some hormones building up for 250 years, so I've got some stuff to work out."
Yeah. And
Bancroft was watching the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was recorded by a firefly, is what they call them. And Poe actually tells Kovac that his security protocols were corrupted a little bit, and that's how that firefly got in. So Bancroft basically tells Kovac that he knows that they slept together while the couple are fighting, and he goes, let's just make this interesting. And he kind of pushes Kovac into the ring to fight to the death. And he tells the couple, he says, whoever, if you both kill, whoever kills him gets a new sleeve, or if you both kill him, you both get new sleeve upgrades. And so of course both couples are going at him, and it's, he's an envoy, so he can take care of himself, but he's getting pretty messed up too. He's getting cut. And Ortega at this point is going, this fight is over with. This isn't what you're licensed for. And in the meantime, we have Elliot, who is on his own mission. He's trying to get some information. He's broken into the core, and he's downloading files. And when he's supposed to be the backup, he's posing as a waiter at this whole bank party. And he finally comes in with his gun, which Ortega takes and shoots the control screen for the gravity control. And that ends the match right then and there.
Yep. And Elliot also, when he was doing all that backup in the files and hacking, he wasn't supposed to be doing that. Actually, that was for his own purposes.
Exactly.
Which was cool.
Side mission.
Yeah, he was on his own little side message. So yeah, he's not just he's not a dummy in any way, shape, or form, and a very good character who I liked a lot.
Yeah. And so at the end of this, Kovacs ends up going back to the Jack Me Off Lounge to meet with the prostitute again. Yeah, I know. I have to say it. That's the name of the place, We're going to get demonetized for that one anyway. I already know that one. So,
so we'll lose $2.
Exactly. And he wants to find out what's happened to Lizzie.
But Viking Bitch has financed this episode. Thank you.
We also found out, we probably didn't mention this, but that Bancroft likes to go to that lounge, and he likes to choke out the prostitutes, basically kill them, and then he buys them upgraded sleeves. And Lizzie was one of his regular girls that he liked to go to.
But he's a really great guy. He stops right before he kills them.
Yeah, well, no, he says if he can kill them, but he buys them new sleeves.
Well, yeah, he doesn't destroy their stacks. I mean,
yeah, he doesn't destroy the stacks. So the girl who he's going to go meet, posing as Lizzie's mom, is there, and she says, I'm sorry, but they made me do this. And she injects him with something, knocks him out, and he gets taken. And that's how we end episode 3, with him being knocked out.
Yep. And episode 4 is messed up in a lot of ways.
Episode 4, we have the Russian coming back, and he's taken Kovac and takes him to a torture factory, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and this Russian is a twin. He's basically got a twin sleeve. So his stack is put into 2 different bodies. Yeah, he cloned himself, but he put it in like a different body. So so he thinks it's his brother. So he thinks Tack killed his brother, even though it's just a copy of him.
Sorry, Ghost World says I'm out. Mute.
Later, dude.
See you tomorrow. Candace, it is like the gladiator rings of old. We were actually kind of mentioning that gladiator rings, just like the multiverse, is really hot right now because it's been in Flash, it's been in this show, and it's also been in one other show too that I'm blanking out on at the moment. But it's been in 3 different genre shows just recently, just this season. Gladiator bouts. So so he ends up getting put into a VR torture chamber, and you got to remember, so Vernon and Ortega are off doing their own things. They think Kovacs is off doing his own thing, so they don't even think to look for him. And Kovacs is drugged, put into the VR world, and basically you can be killed over and over and over again. All kinds of manner of torture. You can be put in different bodies. So raped, tortured, you name it, they can do it to you. And I actually had read something from the director of this episode, because in the book, I guess they switched him over to a female body and they do some pretty despicable things to him in that. And she was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. We can get the gist of it without having to resort to that, which I'm kind of glad that they didn't do it. So
yeah,
they mentioned
it's yeah, they don't, it was brutal as it was. Okay. Exactly. So what they do is when he goes there, and for one, just the insinuation of it, and he still gets raped, by the way. He does. Okay, we just don't see it, and it's just him, which I think is just as bad, really. There should be no difference. And but they just allude to that, which is always kind of what they should do. For one, I think it's always scarier and it's always better when you leave stuff to the imagination. That's the John Milius school of filmmaking. Do not show too much. Jaws, basically, you barely see Jaws at all. So it's about, just making, even Sauron and Lord of the Rings, you don't see him at all. It's just the thought of him out there, and that's all you need. So that was done well. But when he gets into that VR, it's also, they temper down his power, so he doesn't his bones are more brittle, and he feels all this, right? And he doesn't have his envoy skills, and it's messed up, and he dies over and over and over and over again. We actually lose count with how many times he dies, but he's in there almost hundreds. And time passes differently in VR than it does in the real world. So he could feel like he died over the period of like 10 years or something like that, or months. We'll say months.
Yeah.
So it was bad.
And so we get flashbacks of his envoy training, in which Falconer had brought them all the envoys into the VR torture. And she goes, you are going to be captured at some point. You are going to be tortured. You got to know how to deal with it and how to break out of it. And she goes, it's not beating not enduring the torture and not defeating the game. You've got to defeat the player, and you've got to draw the player in so they think that you're vulnerable when actually you're not, and take them over. And that's how you get out. And
go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Was it this episode where we started out with the little animated patchwork man thing?
Yes, I believe
it was either second or third episode. So there's a flashback to Tack with his sister when they were kids, and they had this really abusive father. So I guess mom was Asian and dad was Eastern European.
Yes.
And he gets sorry, somebody just popped their head in. Hi. My wife just popped her head in and laughed. It is kind of funny, this thing we do. He beats Tack's dad beat his wife, beat the kids. And they told the story of the Patchwork Man, where it's this fable from their homeworld where I guess this guy was taking children and cutting them up to try to make a better
child.
A worker child. And then that the monster ended up turning on its creator, just like Frankenstein. And then now it's walking the streets looking for pieces of kids to snap on, to sew onto its body.
Falling apart. Yeah.
Yeah. And they sing a little song. It's super creepy. It's good. It's really, really well done.
And so we see that they see that he can't be broken. He's just, he's gone past the allotted time. The Russians allotted time. He's paid for a certain amount of time to be, the torture. And the techs are like, okay, our time's up here. We need to go home. And they actually take the Russian out, and they're like, okay, if you want more time, you got to pay for it. Otherwise this isn't going to work. He's not going to be broken. And they say, well, we've got one other thing. It's Chinese. It's a Chinese worm that we've only used it one other time on a woman, and she broke severely. So, which think about, hold that for later, because it comes up again.
That definitely comes up again.
And so they use this worm. It's these little weird worms that the Russian is cutting cuts into Tack, and then letting these worms crawl into him and crawl inside of him and do whatever they're doing to him. It's just really, really nasty stuff.
That's a heebie-jeebie moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he keeps calling, the Russian keeps calling Tack Riker.
Yeah.
Keeps calling him Riker. And we don't know why. And yes, Kenneth, the worm did remind me of Matrix. It looked a lot like the Matrix worm, very much so. And we end up having he finally
the
ends
Matrix heavily influenced this, by the way.
Yeah. So we finally end up getting him. We have another flashback of how he can erase the chains in VR when he's talking to Falconer, and we see him actually open up his chains with the Russian, and he escapes his VR. He wakes up in the real world, and he basically starts telling the techs. He goes, "You guys screwed up big time," because I'm a CTAC officer. I'm not this Riker guy. He goes, "You guys screwed up big time." He goes, "And I'm going to delete all of you. I'm going to have your stacks crush. And this is all part of the Envoy training, is to basically create fear." And he goes, "The first person who unties me is the one who's going to live. Everyone else gets to die." And both the techs are scrambling to pop open the restraints. And one guy gets one arm open. That's all he needs. He basically just starts going to town on these people and ripping them up.
And yeah, before he gets into this, before Tak gets into the torture, there's like this really mundane scene where you have the Russian guy, who was from Dirk Gently. I don't know if anybody watched Dirk Gently. He played one of those weird soul sucking guys.
Yeah, and he was also in Winona Earp. He's the main bad guy in Winona Earp.
And before Tak and him go down, they're like, it's like a day at the office. Like two guys are talking about, girls or something like that, inappropriately, of course.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I hope we get lunch break," and blah blah blah. So and a manager comes in going, "Can we do this timely?" So there's a bunch of office geeks, and so it's very business-like. This is a normal business in this whatever this VR torture chamber is. So yeah, so when Tak wakes up, he mows everybody down.
And also in the same room
in the same room, we find out kind of what happened to Lizzie.
No, it wasn't Lizzie. It's actually was that Lizzie?
No, it wasn't Lizzie, but we get the idea. Like, they used the worm on her, but they why do you think that? I mean, because he looked over and there was the hooker who helped him, and
that was the hooker that jumped. Remember, that fell from the sky. So this is another story that we'd forgotten.
No. The girl that was in there with him was the one who had helped him originally. And she said, "I'm sorry," and hit him in the neck with the and knocked him out earlier in the episode. So they brought her in there too, and for some reason they opened her up. Man, they just destroyed her, because the woman that falls out of the sky, she shows up later.
Okay, I thought
intact. Yeah. So yeah, the hooker who helped him, who helped Tak,
being taken apart,
was the one. Yeah, she was just like utterly taken apart, and I was kind of confused to why. Why did they? I mean, it wasn't even like, it wasn't surgical. It was just they ripped her to shreds. Now, were they torturing her too?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a very.
Yeah, I was a little confused about that. If anybody in the chat can help out, maybe if you've read, not too many book spoilers, but I think it was that was her torture too, but they were like cutting into her and stuff it was disgusting. So yeah, they held back on the one scene of like not showing him turned into a woman and getting, but they literally tore her insides out. And I was completely confused by that scene.
Candace says she was guessing they were harvesting organs.
They were okay. Because it was disgusting. And he was extra pissed and went and killed everybody else out on the outside office.
yeah, he kills everyone inside, and then just goes out and just starts murdering everybody out in the lobby, and ends up taking the Russian's head and his stack.
Yep.
And basically blows up the place. So that's how that episode 4 ends.
There's also in episode 4, there's a little side story that's freaking hilarious. Is it's De los Muertes, it's Halloween, and Ortega goes home to her very religious family who have signed the waiver, and they don't want her to get spun up or use her stack. So it's your typical religious family going, "Listen, you got to find God again." God, it reminds me of my mom. So and she brings a guest. And there was a guy earlier in the episode, or I don't know if this was in the 3rd episode, there was some guy she was arresting, and he was being super inappropriate and going, "Come on, baby, come on over here."
He was being really loud while she was talking on the phone to her mom. And she's like, I'm trying to have a conversation with my mom.
More than loud, inappropriately loud. So yes. He gets knocked out, and he becomes a guest for dinner because they put grandma in his body. And this is this tattooed dude with like a spider web tattooed on his head.
6'7".
I love the number 14 instead of the MS-13. They got the 14 on his head. That was funny. And yeah, speaking fluent Spanish and acting like a Latino grandma, which was hilarious. I thought it was funny. Yeah. Even when she had to go pee, that was good. That was funny. So during this horrible torture, we're cutting back to this fun little family scene with a sleeved grandma.
And I also love that the entire time, Abood has been calling Ortega's mother by her first name, and she goes, "Stop doing that." Yeah. And we find out why is because Abood and her mom have pretty much, they think, have a relationship going. Yep. And and Ortega doesn't know about it. So, which I thought was pretty funny.
That's funny. I like that. That was a fun scene. With grandma.
And she even says they go back to the police precinct at the end of Dia de los Muertos, and she says, "You know what?" She goes, "It was great to see everyone again and all this." She goes, "But I think this is gonna be my last time." She goes, "I don't want to be spun back up again." And she goes, "By the way," she goes, "this is a police station, right? Do you have any drugs?" I want to try some drugs before I go. And Becky bitches, "I'm peeing standing up." I love that one too.
"I'm peeing standing up, kids," and the kids are all laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really fun little scene interspersed with this torture. So it really needed it. It was done well to the point where, you needed some. Exactly.
But there are darker things to come, much, much darker.
Exactly. So we end episode 4 with Kovacs basically killing everybody in that torture factory, and then moving on with the Russian's head and his stack. And he also has found out who Riker actually is. So Riker, or the body that he's inhabiting, is Ortega's old boyfriend
and partner.
Yeah. And the Russian had framed him for some death so that he would get his stack removed from his sleeve. And God, it was just amazing. He's very, very pissed at this point, and he confronts Ortega about it. And but he sleeps with her anyway.
Yeah, he's not that conflicted about it. And she sleeps with him, which if I was Riker, I'd be all, "Hey." And he, at this point, we don't know if Riker's dead or what. We don't know what happened to Riker. We know he might have gotten set up at some point, but we don't know if he got killed or if his stack is dead and his sleeve is alive, or we have no idea what happened. We just know that he's in Riker's body, and we find out kind of why.
Yeah. So that whole with the Russian framing him. And so Poe finds out that Bancroft went to he found out from his VR friends, his AI friends, I should say, that Bancroft had sought out his son at in an arena and found his son and beat the crap out of him, almost beat him to death in the crowd, and actually has some footage of this. That's he found this from Vernon Elliot's stuff that he had downloaded. And
there's a cool scene when with Poe, how he finds that out. They have a little card game with all the other AIs. So you see some other management AIs, and you find out, and this is just a little aside that they could totally play with later. They didn't really go into it very much in this series, but this is something that can play out great. Is the AIs are living things with their own wants and needs, and they don't like humans. And there was 4 different ones there, and they're all management of a hotel or a strip joint or a fighting ring. And yeah, they're definitely very anti-human, and Poe's the only one who really likes humans. He finds them an interesting study. And Poe doesn't very much like his fellow AI guys, and they're all sitting at the poker table, and one of the AIs was talking about, I love, he does like basically snuff films. Mm-hmm. And Poe kind of walks away from the table in disgust. But that gives you an idea of like we've got these potential immortal meths out there. We've got rogue AI. That's why nobody will stay in the hotels anymore. As this thing is going on, it's piecing together this just bigger world that's very cool, by the way.
And so we have Ortega and Kovac going over to the arena, where we meet the arena, the battle drum, as it's called.
Fight drum,
the fight drum. And that is staffed by the proprietor, who is Matt Frewer.
Carnage, yes, Matt. Yes. Yeah, called Carnage. And he looks like Legion, by the way, the comic version of Legion a little bit. And dude, he looks so good. He looked
really young. He looked like, it's amazing though. The makeup
they straight up like did the Max Headroom to his teeth. He had his teeth capped with those. Very cool. And we even have a little Max Headroom moment, just real quick. That was awesome. I love that. I was like, yes.
And that happened. Kovac sees his body on ice down there, and he's kind of freaked out. And we find out that Carnage had actually found his DNA in some archival thing and basically had it cloned. And he goes, "Oh, you like the body? It could be yours if you want it, but it's going to cost you." He thinks that Kovac is actually Riker.
Yeah, and he's Carnage says something very interesting when Ortega, for one, they went there to get some surveillance, and Carnage's thing is like, hey, we do these fights, I don't do any surveillance at all. And then she's like, no, I know you do surveillance, let's go in there, come on, or I could just get a warrant. So he lets her in, and then she's just chit-chatting with her, and she's all, oh, so how's business, how are things coming? He's all, well, I just locked down a deal. As a matter of fact, I just locked something down right now. It was or what's it about? Well, it's a little bit about the past, a little bit of it now, which plays out kind of the next episode, which it was the second time around I caught that what he said was pretty much kind of what's about to happen.
Yeah. And so we find out that he's recorded everything on VHS, because that's the analog version down there. So he has recorded this entire fight scene that had happened between Bancroft and his son. And they go back to the Takashi goes to go and do what he's got to do. And Ortega goes back to the police department, where we find out that the Ghost Walker has taken over one of the cops. He has basically killed the cop and taken his sleeve. And as they're transporting the Russian in the elevator, the Ghost Walker asks are you a true believer? And pulls out this wicked little knife and basically just stabs Ortega in the shoulder, injuring her pretty badly, disarms her. The Russian is fighting Abood, excuse me. I always
literally disarms her.
Yeah. And he's basically stabbing the crap out of her. And at one point, he's got the gun. The gun's gone off a couple of times at this point. He gets the gun, and Abood actually dives in front of her and gets his stack blown out.
Yep. And Tax saw Ghostwalker right before the elevator closed, so he's trying to climb the stairs during this whole. It's brutal, dude. She gets big chunks of skin taken out. Yeah. So Abood sacrifices himself.
Yeah, and so they end up escaping, the Ghost Walker and the Russian, and we get the elevator opening up, and Tax sees Ortega lying there in a pool of blood, and that's where we end episode 5.
Yep.
And with episode 6, we have Tack grabbing Ortega, and she's bleeding pretty badly. He picks her up, throws her in a car, and he's flying her to the hospital. And he gets her to the hospital, and he goes, we need to see a doctor stat. And this shows you how messed up it is. She goes, well, put her hand down there. They put her hand on the pad. She has insufficient funds. She can wait with the rest of the people. And she's bleeding out there. She's bleeding out to death. So Tack just spits on the, I love how he did it. He just spits on the screen, which reads his DNA, and automatically everything's paid for. And he pays for a new arm, because she's got to have her arm amputated. So he gives her a new bionic arm and basically all the works that she needs.
Yeah, it's made out of titanium or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
It gives her a superpower, basically.
Yeah, and the doctor was shilling hard Candace on this one. He kept, going, oh, if you want to upgrade to this, if you want, and as he's working on her,
Yeah, do you want to buy the warranty?
Yeah. Oh man, it was just, you could tell how the insurance system has gone out there. So we end up having Kovac telling Bancroft, he ends up going back and telling Bancroft about his son posing as Bancroft for the Japan deal during those 48 hours that Bancroft can't remember. And Bancroft's not too happy about this, and because he had been working for months on that deal, but Bancroft's son was able to close it out fairly quickly, and while Bancroft could not himself. So he's pretty pissed about it, and he ends up destroying the clone that his son had 3D printed.
Yep. And yes, you can 3D print clones. It's even expensive for a meth to do. And he had like a secret, secret room where he was watching a bunch of videos of his dad to get his mannerisms and stuff like that. And they had the 3D printer. And also throughout all these episodes, we're getting weird flashbacks through Tack's perspective. Like he'll start seeing what looks like snow, but it ends up being ash falling all the time. And it might be part of his, psychosis from, just jumping in between too many sleeves. But, or it also could be like a PTSD because before he, got put on ice for 250 years, he had some pretty bad things happen. So we start learning just in little clips. We see Falconer a little bit. She's always whispering in his ear. In the first episode, Tack sees his sister and it's clearly just a vision of his sister. And then he starts seeing Falconer. Like basically when he's just thinking to himself, we'll see Falconer come in and she gives some of her envoy training. But we do get some actual flashbacks too of his dad beating his mom and them hiding in a closet. And we get intercut with that scene when Bancroft is talking to his son about, basically getting pissed at his wife for coddling his son. And, his son just wanted to be like his dad, wanted his dad's respect. It wasn't, at first they thought he was the murderer, but it turns out he wasn't. He just wanted his dad respect. And then Tack says something really interesting. He says, it takes a certain amount of rage to kill your own father. And this kid doesn't have it. Trust me.
Exactly. He says, trust me on this. Yeah. And so that's when we end up having the Russian meeting his boss with the Ghost Walker. And basically the boss says, you didn't do what we paid you to do. But we have another job for you. And he goes, you got to go with the Ghost Walker, Mr. Lung, as he's called, and go and do something. And actually, Mr. Lung is going to kill the Russian, going to clean up any loose ends here. And he starts running. The Russian starts running away from the Ghost Walker. They're running through the streets of Bay City. He ends up running back to the tattoo shop where he's got his backup plan. And you see him call someone and say, okay, I need a jump. I need an extraction right now. And he says, yes, the deal's good. I'll go with that. And you see a flash of light. All the power goes out in the block there. And then we see Carnage welcoming the Russian into Tack's old body.
Yep.
So that's the deal right there.
And yeah, that was
back to. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no! So what you could basically do is upload your stuff, and it's called it's what do they call it? Needle something or needle cast. So for a lot of money, you can back yourself up and needle cast yourself through another body. So they can actually you don't have to have that physical stack all the time. They can broadcast it out. One of the cool lines when Ghostwalker's with taking the Russian out and Ghostwalker's like, we all have to have a purpose. Are you a true believer? We all have a purpose in this life. I know my purpose. And he's all, my purpose is to kick lots of ass, which is funny.
Yeah. And so we end up going back to the hospital and we find out that the police chief is actually on the take. He is owned by Bancroft. And he knew about all this stuff to begin with. And Ortega says, "You mind if we have a word?" And Tack's like, "Take all the time you need." And she basically beats the crap out of the cop. I mean, out of her chief. She like pushes him into the floor, into the ground, wall. She breaks his back, literally.
Breaks his back.
Yeah. And then she goes, "Okay, where the hell are my clothes?"
Yep.
And so they leave and end up going to the arena. And this is where they end up getting captured. And taken to the battle drum, or excuse me, the fight drum. And they're put into the ring to fight against these, I guess you called spliced people. These spliced sleeves. One guy looks like a rhino, one guy looks like a tiger, and between Kovac and Ortega's new arm, they kill both of them, and then the Russian jumps into the ring, and he gets killed because it's
Tack's old body.
Yeah, it's Tack's old body, which freaks him out, But still, he takes them.
First time they see him though is when they actually go to the VR. They go to a VR cafe they're trying
to take that back. Yeah.
They go to a VR cafe, and Tack, when he's in VR, can make himself look like another body, so he looks like the police captain. And we see another character who we've not seen, or I think we've seen once before, and he's some underworld guy who's controlling all this stuff. And he told the Russian, "Listen, you can't kill the Russian. You got to leave him alone. I know he killed your brother, but you are not meant to understand everything." So they go to the VR cafe in Oakland, and they can only use low res, by the way, to kind of suss out who the hell's all behind it. And once Tack is in there as the police captain, and he's talking to this underworld guy, and the underworld guy like recognizes him, goes, "Wait a minute, you're not the police captain. Tack, is that you?" And then he gets pulled out by Ortega, and he's like, "Why'd you pull me out?" "Oh, well, it's awfully quiet." He's all, "Yeah, well, there's something wrong with that." And they walk out into the VR cafe, and there's like a bunch of bodies just sitting up, but they're not moving. And he pushes one over, and pretty much all their heads fall off. And there is OG Tack sitting there. And that's when they end up in the fighting rink. And so they're in the fighting rink, and they take on Rhino and Tigra there, or Tiger Man. And so after they've done, and that sucks that they killed OG Tack so fast. I thought he was going to be around for a little while.
I did too. Yeah. Well, actually, they didn't kill him. They were actually on their way out because he had a knife tipped with Reaper.
He did.
And if he hadn't been distracted, he would have killed them. But we have a third person who comes in, which is a woman.
So OG Tack does get killed because Ortega crushes his stack with her.
That's right. Arm. Yes, she does. And just as Carnage says, "Kill them," where she's going to have everyone come in and just kill them, we have Ninja Lady all of a sudden show up out of nowhere with a katana.
Deus Max. You know what I'm saying. Go on.
And she basically just starts killing people left and right. She's shooting at people. She is, slicing people up. She's just going full on ninja on people, and everyone starts running out because she's got she's got a couple different weapons, and she ends up going into the ring, and Ortega starts to attack her because she's this ninja woman's going straight for Tack, and the Ninja Lady knocks out Ortega, and then takes Tack, and that's where we end episode 6.
Deus Ex Machina. I was actually trying to say Deus Ex My Ninja came in. Came in and
what up, my ninja?
My ninja, and killed everybody. And that scene was badass, and it was like a cover to More Human Than Human by Rob Zombie.
Yes.
She wastes everybody, and that's how that episode ends, and that's where we're gonna end this recap.
Yes,
because there's 4 more episodes to go after this.
Yes.
Dude, this felt like way more than 10 episodes, by the way. I mean, it's so full of story.
No filler.
There's no filler in this. You know how most of the Netflix series, like most of them, aside from Daredevil season 1 and 2, really had slow moments in them. This does not have that. It might have a slow part in a show. I can't think of one though. I don't know. Is there any comments you want to get to? real quick?
There's a lot of comments.
We can go for like 5 more minutes. So
okay,
I'll have to rush through them here. Sorry. On a time limit. We got Star Trek Discovery next.
Candace says it's very old school sci-fi, aka I thought it's a thought experiment about society. Yes, definitely was. And we got the grandma thing. I had no clue about the body being her old partner. That was actually very surprising. There's a good throw, same thing with Tack's old body showing up, in the arena. They have some really good little, peppering of throwing things in, and they do it throughout this, this whole season. They throw little things in like that.
There's so many fun things they can do with the story, and they really did a lot of them. But like with playing with bodies, we can have an entire season where Joel Kinnaman is like the bad guy and he's like fighting his old, like, where's his original sleeve, and each actor who has played Tack, I would watch a show with any of those guys. So they got 3 solid good actors. I don't know how they did that. It must have been, this thing looks so expensive and good.
Yeah. So. And the nice thing about this too, is that you have a series now where if you could switch bodies like this, you aren't tied to one actor.
Doctor Who, you can Doctor Who the crap out of this show. It could run forever.
Doctor Who. Yeah, because you could really just switch it up. You don't even need to have the same actor in every scene, really, like they did in this one.
No,
we had 3 different actors.
Well, yeah, there's one episode that's later on that's all original Tack, pretty most of it, like 2/3 of it. So, it's fun.
So Candace says, plus I like that the mom stood in front of her son. She's not a great person, but she loves her kids and she knows her husband is unstable. Yeah, we do get that whole scene of their father killing their mother and then dragging her body out and dumping her into the coolant to disappear.
Yeah, that was messed up.
Yeah.
That was messed up. God, there's one comment in here. And it's from who's it from? It's from Candace Williams. Yeah, Candace. She's talking about the motivations of a certain character. We'll get into that tomorrow night. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that because I kind of agree. I kind of agree with that, but yeah, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, and I agree. It is a special kind of weird to worship your oppressors as gods. Like the Ghostwalker was saying, he likens the meths to gods and that they're living and breathing.
Yeah, his rationale, while insane, makes a little more sense than it's a god that answers your prayers.
Yeah.
Yes,
which we saw with Bancroft going to the lepers, if you will, and sacrificing one of his clones just to be among them, if you will. And that was just really, just really kind of messed up in its own right,
Yep. Brian Smart has read the books. He says once you get into the 3rd episode, it changes a lot from the book. In the lab, the torture scene was so much more intense. Yeah, I'm gonna have to actually read this book. I usually, because I commute to work, I can hit an audiobook, but this audiobook will make me drive off the road.
Yeah, someone asked you if it was an audiobook, and yeah, it was an audiobook that he had bought. So
no, the book itself, I'm just gonna read it on my lunch hour or something like that. But man, the audiobook is just, they need to re-record that. It was recorded 15 years ago when they weren't, you could do that. People expect a little more from their audiobooks now, at least I do, to sound like the Entitled fan.
And Viking Bitch says, good luck on your new job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I get to go down there tomorrow, and that'll be lots of fun, I think.
So you think we should wrap it up here? And
we should. Yeah, sorry we couldn't get to everybody's comments. We were on a time limit tonight, but thank you all for joining us. And that was Viking Bitch, Brian Smart, Candace Williams, Ghost World was in there.
Bam. Brian Smart, we already said, and Ghost World, yes, you said. And then we had some people in the beginning here as well.
What's up, Bam? We had a thing up today, by the way.
Apple Crow came in for a little bit as well. And again, thank you, Viking Bitch, for the donation, the $5 donation. That was awesome.
She is too good to us, really.
She is. She's very good to us. And that is everyone, I believe. Yes,
that is everyone.
Scrolling through fairly quickly.
So if you want to hang in there, I'll be back in a little over an hour for Star Trek Discovery, the penultimate episode, and we'll be back with more Alter Carbon episodes 7 through 10 Monday, 8 p.m. So finish your binges, guys, and we'll talk the rest of the show and and the future. Also Wednesday, the X-Files will be back. We will be Happy-less, which is very sad. Friday, we got the Friday Night Live as usual. We're moving Counterpart to Sunday. So check the Nerdrotic, check nerdrotic.com for the schedule. All of our times will be up there. I also share it on our Facebook page, and I will put it on our Twitter as well as repeating it pretty much every podcast. Now, you can find all of our videos and podcasts at nerdrotic.com. Dennis has his Twitter. It's at DeForce, DAFORCE. Mine is at Nerdrotics. And all of our description, or all of our links will be in the description when this rolls over into a video, including Patreon, which is patreon.com/nerdrotic. Dennis, any final words on this fabulous show?
We also have a new thing on Facebook. We have a group chat now. So you can actually post comments, things like that. We know before you couldn't do it on our page. So go and take a look at that as well and join up on that. And I just want to say hi to Jody, Easy Boo, and Mark Maginay, who just came in here at the last minute. Stick around. They're going to be doing Star Trek Discovery. Yep.
We'll be back in an hour.
Gary will be back. I'm not. So don't let the door hit
Star Trek Discovery, don't you? It's your favorite show.
Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out, America, and the rest of the world.
May the small folks sing songs of your greatness. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.